The Dow hit a record high.
Holding steady.
The economy.
Oh, we got your back, Jack. Make a great plan, man. A real McCoy, Troy. Our 3 cents for free. The options are big, Nick. You need to discuss much. You got the key, KC, in exit strategy.
We're back with another exciting episode of Our 3 Cents. Our 3 Cents is brought to you by Hensler Financial, and it's an offshoot of our radio show, Money Talks. We use this forum to talk a lot about business strategy, including how you're going to make your next step, which might be retirement. KC likes to say, no matter what it is, we're really just about business strategy, which makes perfect sense, right?
That's it.
Always. One of the things that we've talked quite a bit about, we kind of danced around in our previous podcasts, and that is the buy-sell agreement. We've made it clear that it's very important, so we wanted to delve a little deeper into some of the items that you want to make sure are in the buy-sell agreement. Obviously, this is an agreement that you would make sure you put together, assuming that the path might not be as smooth as planned for whatever reason. I mean, we've talked about business ownership being full of emotion. When it comes to value, the price is something that you can get a lot of emotion out of. But there's 5 Ds, and I'll let KC go through those because they've got me so screwed up I can't remember what they are. But
I'm going to try not to say dismemberment this time, but
too late.
I think you did.
Too late. Yeah.
Right. So death, disability, divorce, distress, and disagreement.
Disagreement.
Yeah.
All right. So those 5 items actually do come into play in some capacity where it comes to the ownership of the business, and a buy-sell agreement basically is just as it sounds. It's an agreement in advance that addresses some items that might come up on your in your business ownership life.
Yeah, and all these, a buy-sell agreement isn't going to prevent any of these, but what it's going to do is make them a bit less stressful for you to work through, because it's going to lay out defined ways that you would transition ownership should any of these situations arise.
It's kind of like a prenup.
It is. It's a business
to some
prenup.
degree.
Yeah.
And the thing is, you'd better address them when everybody's on good terms. Going into the business, usually people are really hopeful. The sun's shining and the skies are bright and nobody expects anything but grand profits to come. So why not, when everyone's on that high, if you will, go ahead and talk about, well, what if clouds arise?
Sure. Well,
approximately 50% of businesses transition by way of one of those 5 Ds that we talked about. So
yeah.
It's not always an expected exit, so you need to make sure that you're planning ahead.
Absolutely.
And rainy days come.
And just, a formal definition of what a buy-sell agreement actually is, it's a legally binding agreement between a business and its owners that clearly stipulates how a significant event, which is what we've been talking about, the 5 Ds, affects the management and control of the business. So a well-drafted buy-sell agreement should anticipate the intents and needs of the owners, as well as potential conflicts that might arise among owners if one or more of them wish to sell his or her interest in the business or is forced to do so.
Yeah, Nick, you started off a legal document, right? So
that's right.
Got to go ahead and tell you all, none of us are attorneys. By the way, I don't think I failed to introduce you guys, and you didn't call me out on it. I am Troy Harmon. I'm here with Nick Antonucci and Casey Smith, and none of the 3 of us are attorneys, but this is definitely a legal matter. We don't write buy-sell agreements, but we can read through and tell you if yours is worth a flip. More often than not, the biggest problem we find is there's not one in existence in many businesses. And beyond that, there's several other issues that we see quite often that don't make sense. So one of the items that a buy-sell agreement should identify, first of all, since I'm a business valuation guy, is how the business value will be introduced, right? Yeah. How the decision to buy and sell, what price is going to be determined, right?
And there's three common ways to do this, and I think we've come across just about all of them, Troy. And there's pros and cons to each. We can step through each one of them and kind of highlight high level the pros and cons of each. But I think for me, there is one that I just can't really recommend using. So just real quick, what the three are is a fixed price agreement, which kind of self-explanatory. You come to an agreement on what the value is today at the time of writing it, and that's what constitutes the value of the business going forward.
Sure, and that ignores things like inflation and growth and lots and lots of other things. Makes very little sense, if any.
Yeah, the pro, if there is one, is, I mean, it's clearly defined. You know what you're going to get. It's simple. Right. And there's no cost each year to update that because you've agreed on it day one, which some of these others may have a cost associated with them. Then you have the formula agreement, which we see, I think, companies being more and more interested in. It might be a multiple of sales. Probably the most common thing.
That is very common. It's the most common question we get in a business valuation engagement is, how much is this business worth? My buddy tells me it's 5 times EBITDA.
Right.
Nick, I'll leave you to tell them what EBITDA is.
Yeah, that's earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, amortization. So it's a common cash flow measure for companies.
It is, yeah.
But again, a lot of times some don't like it so complicated there. Whereas revenue, you can't manipulate revenue.
That's true.
The revenue is what it is.
It's hard to manipulate revenue. I won't say you can't.
Yeah,
people are creative.
That's true. But that, obviously you said it's a multiple of revenue at the time that the transaction needs to occur. And lastly, there's a business valuation agreement, which is going to provide you with the most accurate, calculation of value at the time. The disadvantage to that is you have to complete that, at every set period of time. Let's say maybe it's annually, semi-annually, or maybe it's just each time a transaction is going to occur.
Yeah, you would want to write that into the buy-sell agreement as to what are the periods,
absolutely,
how often you have a valuation done or things like that.
Absolutely, Casey. And it is the most costly because you do have to have the business valued at those set increments or at the time that someone wants to sell their shares.
Maybe just and let's face it, a buy-sell agreement, just like any other legal document, it can be crafted to fit the situation, can be crafted to fit the individual, can be crafted to fit the business, and we do encourage you to be as creative as possible. Try not to get too specific on things. If it doesn't need to be done.
Right.
But where you do need specifics, definitely talk about it. Business valuation, I think, is one. And Nick, to your point, I think probably it would be best if you just hire a professional to give you an idea at the time of the transaction. That would be my preference.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you want to make sure that in the agreement, I mean, while you don't want to make it so specific that it's hard to implement or follow, but you don't want to be vague or use a lot of generalities that could be misinterpreted later, maybe a different than you would have wished. And you should be something you revisit. We advise our clients for estate planning to have their will looked at every couple of years, even if there's really been no material changes. Probably the same concept here. I mean, you want to make sure
best practice.
You're reviewing the document, make sure that it meets what the expectations of the owners are, and that nothing has changed that would, go against those wishes.
Yeah. So we've talked a little about valuation. What about triggering events? That's kind of back to your 5 Ds, right, Casey? Yeah. What would happen that would trigger the buy-sell? So, obviously the one that we see quite a bit is going to be disagreement. You see ownership get in disagreement. You get to the point where you just don't want to work with that person who probably started as your friend and may not ever be again.
And that's probably one of the harder ones to solve for too, is, to going into writing the buy-sell agreement with the all intents and purposes are that there will be no disagreement, but inevitably things happen. So trying to lay out what that looks like, it's kind of difficult for people to even consider.
Yeah. And it's hard to call that a trigger unless you just have one partner who makes an offer to the other. More often than not, we don't see anything that's a hard trigger if a business partner goes out. And we've seen some things that would almost get to the point of fraud, where you've got one business partner that's working against the business. Now that gets a little crazy, and maybe that should be addressed at some level, maybe more so in the operating agreement, where you've got a partner. But that's probably a little beyond the scope of a buy-sell agreement.
Right.
But what I've seen, Casey, is I have seen documents that say if I offer, say me and you were business owners, and we were partners, and if I offer you a specific price to buy out your share of the business, then I would have to honor that same price. If you rejected it, the counteroffer would be that I would have to be willing to sell at that price. And I've seen those kind of backfire on people, if you will.
I can see that.
But I've seen it as a buy-sell agreement before. You make an offer to your partner thinking you're going to lowball them, and the next thing you know, you've sold your business for an offer that you wouldn't have accepted. It's kind of the concept that I do with my kids. If there's a piece of cake and there's three of us, and somebody wants to split the cake, one cut, the other one picks.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably about as fair as you can get, right? If you're going to offer your partner something that you wouldn't take, then you better be careful.
Yeah, for sure. That can go against you.
Beyond the disagreements, I think one that seems to pop up pretty often and is out of the owner's control is when a divorce comes into play.
Right.
And then you've opened, if you don't have a good buy-sell agreement, you've opened yourself up to a potential new owner of the company who is not involved in the business, maybe doesn't have knowledge of the business. And because you haven't protected yourself, you've now welcomed in. And
well, that seems like it's kind of a personal matter, definitely something that should be considered in a buy-sell agreement, because those things do happen. And a lot of business owners, the majority of their worth is tied up in the business a lot of times.
Right,
and so
it's
true.
That may be the only asset that a court has to divide up at the end of the day when they're going through a divorce situation. So definitely a big consideration for divorce.
Right. And think of this. If you're dealing with a partner that's a minority partner, if you will, a non-controlling partner, they really don't have the legal power to change their cash flows at all. And if they need to buy out a spouse who's about to be an ex-spouse, how in the world does this work?
Yeah.
I think that, again, might be one of those items that you deal with through the operational agreement. Who can buy stock in your company, or who can be given stock in your company? Quite often, you'll see that it has to go before a vote, before a person who might be, I guess, less than interested, becomes an owner of the company itself, especially in small, closely held businesses. So definitely something to address.
No question.
Some of your legal documents.
And then obviously the easy one is death.
That's easy?
That's the easy one.
All right. Well, it's pretty cut and dry. There's a trigger there, right?
Yeah, there's a definite trigger, and it's also something that can be, solved with insurance. You can kind of have an insurance policy on the owners of the business. So if anyone dies, then the company can use the proceeds from the insurance policy to buy out the surviving beneficiary.
And that's pretty common too.
Yeah. So well, insurance comes into play a lot in these buy-sell agreements, and so working with the team.
I think that's something we've touched on in earlier shows, but I can't stress enough is no one person is so versed in all the various complexities that are involved in exit planning, not just this particular instance of buy-sell agreements. And you need to have, a team around. You need to have someone who's going to consider the tax implications of these things, a lawyer to write up the documents, perhaps, a financial advisor.
Yeah. Insurance
person.
Yeah. There's the team is an important aspect. Like you said, Nick, I mean, no one can do all of these components, at least not well. We can help you with a lot of them here at Hensler, but, part of what we do is put together that strong team.
Yeah, exactly. It's not one person that works on these sorts of things at our office that does them all. It takes, even within our company, it takes a team.
Yeah.
Because we have various strengths.
Well, while we're on it, let's go ahead and throw the number out. If you wanted to get in touch with us and get our advice or some help with your business strategy, exit planning, even purchase planning, you can give us a call at 770-429-9166. Ask for any of us, Troy, Casey, Nick, or business valuation or exit planning. If you say any of those words, you'll get in touch with one of the three of us at some point. What about if your partner, whether they be a minority or a controlling partner, what if there's a bankruptcy involved? Should the documentation talk about that at all? It's almost like a divorce, right?
Yeah.
It should be the restrictions on ownership or purchase within the company.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have a bank be your new partner.
Right.
Struggle.
Yeah, that is not a situation that many owners want to find themselves in.
Right. Well, what if one partner wants to sell the business and the rest of them aren't in agreement? I mean, quite often all partners are an agent of the company. I would think you'd want to address that as well.
Yeah, no question. I mean, that's the disagreement that we talked about.
I feel like in that case, Troy, most buy-sell agreements that we see have the right of first refusal to the existing owners, right? In that you have to first offer for them to buy you out,
right,
before you can seek a sale to a third party, if you can even do so.
Yeah, and even the process of the purchase should be addressed. How would the business go about buying out the shares of one of the partners? I mean, there's a lot of details to discuss, and it's very important to have these conversations. Like I said, while the skies are fair and the sun's shining and everybody's happy and getting along.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to do it then when before the trouble strikes. So
yeah, no doubt.
Definitely part of your planning.
All right. Well, guys, is there anything else that we need to cover in this? We've got mechanisms to fund the buyout. We've got triggering events. We've got valuation. Some of the issues that would also be involved. The biggest thing is you don't want to be bouncing along happily. Something go wrong, whether it be the death of a partner, the divorce of a partner, and you be in a spot where, number one, you haven't planned. Number two, you don't have the cash flow, or number three, that your partner decides he's going to sell his ownership or her ownership to your mother-in-law or father-in-law.
That's right. Who I'm sure you love dearly.
Oh yeah, that you
and want to work with,
right? Or a competitor. I mean, the sky's the limit on that. There's probably quite a few people you could think of that you wouldn't really want to be partners with anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, these things are very specific to each business. They're all going to be a little bit different. They'll have some of the same components and characteristics, but you really need to have an attorney and a exit planning team. And we're talking about exit planning, but this again is just good business strategy to have an agreement like this in place.
Yeah, and have an agreement. I don't care if it's a bad one. A bad agreement.
A bad agreement is better than none. None, for sure.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think that pretty much wraps the topic. Thanks for listening to Our 3 Cents, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
You just need to commence, gents. Make a great plan, man. A real McCoy and Troy. Our 3 cents for free.
All material presented is from sources believed to be reliable and current, but accuracy cannot be guaranteed. The contents are intended for general information purposes only. Information provided should not be the sole basis in making any decision and is not intended to replace the advice of qualified professionals, such as tax consultants, insurance advisor, or attorney. Although this material is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information with respect to the subject matter, it may not apply in all situations. This is not to be construed as an offer to buy or sell any financial instruments. It is not our intention to state, indicate, or imply in any manner that current or past results are indicative of future profitability or expectations. Portfolio holdings discussed are subject to change. There is no guarantee that in the future these securities will be held in the Hensler accounts. As with all investments, there are associated inherent risks. Please obtain and review all financial material carefully before investing. Hensler is not licensed to offer or sell insurance products. This overview is not to be construed as an offer to purchase any insurance products.